everyone. We're going to witness a ceasefire born not from gunfire, nor from handshakes, but from a pawn, a rook, and a cup of scalding coffee balanced on a rusty crate in the middle of a sweltering tent. That's right. Tonight, you're walking into a war room disguised as a chess match. And if you think diplomacy is boring, well, you've never played against a man who once negotiated with a bishop and assassinated a rook in the same breath. It's 1991. The Gulf War's thunder has just faded. Smoke still drifts from oil wells in the distance like black cotton candy in slow motion. You're in a temporary UN tent set up a few miles south of the Kuwaiti border, neutral ground if such a thing exists out here. The tent is beige, fluttering in the relentless desert wind, and the floor is nothing but loose packed sand. There's a lingering smell of gasoline and cardamom, a combination that shouldn't work but somehow does. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you really like what I'm doing here. And tell me, where are you watching from and what time is it for you? Now, turn off the lights, maybe turn on the fan for some soothing noise, and let's get down to business tonight. You're not here to fight. Not exactly. You're a low-level attaché from a country that shall remain unnamed. One of the many bodies shuffled into the diplomatic mud when the bullets stop flying and the real battle begins. The peace talks. The inside of the tent is crowded but quiet. A translator stands by with a pen behind his ear and sweat marks blooming on his back. A UN observer sips from a dented canteen, pretending not to listen. And right in the center of the tent is the strangest thing. A plastic fold-out table covered in a linen scarf and with a wooden chessboard perched right in the middle. No chairs, just pillows and one small electric fan that turns like it's trying not to pass out. A man is waiting. He's not who you expected. No uniform, no visible security, just an older Kuwaiti man in a white dish dasha, black agal looped over his keffiyeh, eyes sharp like glass knives. He nods politely but doesn't rise when you step in. "This is it," you whisper to the man beside you. "Where are the documents?" "This is the document," he replies, gesturing to the board. You're confused. You weren't briefed on this. Here's what nobody told you. The actual written ceasefire proposal, something resembling a treaty between Kuwait and various loosely involved stakeholders, is waiting in a briefcase outside. But neither side has agreed to even look at it until this chess match is played. It's not official, it's not binding, it's not anything. And yet, neither party will budge without it. You learn quickly. The Kuwaiti emissary, known simply as Hamad, is a chess enthusiast, but not just recreationally. For him, the game is ceremony, ritual, perhaps even negotiation. He insisted on this. One game, no interruptions. Winner gets to speak first at the table. The loser listens. It's absurd. It's theatrical. It's also, in this world, weirdly binding. And then the Israeli arrives. Boots crunch the sand behind you, and in strides a figure you recognize instantly from intelligence photos. General Eli Zerhan, veteran of the Six-Day War, decorated commander from the Yom Kippur Nightmare, and a minor chess celebrity in Tel Aviv circles. He's taller than you thought, with iron-colored hair cut ruthlessly short and the posture of a man who still sleeps on a cot even when he doesn't have to. His eyes flick once over the tent. He says nothing. He nods to Hamad, and then he smiles barely. They both sit. Hamad begins by offering a small tray, Turkish delight dusted with powdered sugar, and a tiny brass cup of Arabic coffee. Zerhan accepts the candy, ignores the coffee. The translator chuckles nervously. You're sweating bullets, and you're not even playing. The game begins with a queen's pawn opening. Classic, neutral, safe. Safe doesn't last. Within minutes, Hamad makes an aggressive knight sacrifice. The room goes quiet. Zerhan furrows his brow, not because he didn't see it coming, but because it's a signal. A provocation? A joke? Or maybe a hint? Because here's the thing. Every piece on the board seems to represent something more. A pawn steps forward, and the negotiators outside shift in their seats. A bishop crosses the center line, and the interpreter flinches like he's watching a drone surveillance feed. You get it now. This isn't a game. This is the war. The sand outside stirs with each gust. You wipe your forehead with a sleeve and lean forward just enough to whisper to the man beside you, "What if nobody wins?" He looks sideways, grim. Then the real war starts again. Half an hour passes. The pieces dwindle. Hamad hums a little tune under his breath, a Kuwaiti lullaby maybe. Zerhan taps a rook twice before moving it. A journalist scribbles on a notepad as quietly as humanly possible, and then it happens. Zerhan, distracted by the aggressive center push, misses a check threat on the king's flank. One move later, it's nearly mate. The emissary doesn't grin. He doesn't gloat. He just pours another cup of coffee and slides it silently towards Zerhan. The Israeli general sighs and rubs his forehead. "You brought decaf," he mutters in Hebrew. Then, check. Hamad replies in Arabic. It's not translated. The next move is defensive. The balance shifts again. Outside, someone coughs. Inside, war inches closer to peace. And still, no one has touched the treaty. You glance sideways at General Zerhan, and you can tell he hates losing. Not in the way a child does, with tantrums and foot stomping, but in that quiet, cold-burning way military men do, where every loss is archived, dissected, and mentally replayed until it's nothing but dust. He shifts slightly on his pillow, doesn't touch the coffee, and moves a bishop with the restraint of a man placing a bet he already regrets. You've heard of this guy. Eli Zerhan, rumored to have memorized the entire Sicilian defense when he was 16, played chess with Arik Sharon during the Golan briefings, and once beat an IBM computer in a kibbutz tournament before they even called them AIs. He doesn't bluff. He doesn't banter. But he sure as hell doesn't lose. Except, right now, he might. The board is tilting. Hamad, the Kuwaiti emissary in his silk robe and polished slippers, is holding the tempo. That night he sacrificed? Pure theater. It opened the whole left side, and now his rook's threatening penetration. You try to keep your poker face, but even you can feel the vibe. This isn't looking great for Team Sabra. Still, Zerhan isn't panicking. In fact, he's leaning back, eyes narrowing, tracing patterns only he can see. He plays a defensive sequence that slows the momentum, dragging the game out like a politician dragging his feet on a vote he knows he'll lose. You wonder, is he playing to win or just not to lose? Behind you, someone sneezes. The translator waves it off. You wipe sand from your lip. The flap of the tent whips open for a second. Outside, an American soldier paces with a clipboard, unaware he just missed history in the making. And then, it happens again. Hamad plays a move that doesn't make any sense. Queen to h4. You blink. Everyone blinks. Even Zerhan pauses. Why? It's early. The queen's exposed. There's no tactical gain. Unless he's baiting. Remind you of anything? The man next to you mutters. You squint at the board. Then it hits you. It's a mirror image of a famous 1982 match between two Israeli grandmasters, one of them rumored to have been advising Mossad while simultaneously playing in the national championship. The game ended in a draw, but only after 42 turns of psychological warfare. The message is subtle but clear. I know your playbook. Zerhan exhales. A smile creeps across his face, barely visible under the fatigue. He doesn't answer Hamad, not directly. But he shifts a pawn one square, slow and deliberate. He's accepted the challenge. Now the tempo picks up. The pieces fly. Moves are made without hesitation. No more theatrics, just razor-edged calculation. Here's the wild part. Neither of them says a word. They communicate entirely through pieces. Knights dancing, rooks slicing, bishops lurking like shadow operatives. The silence becomes so intense that even the journalists stop writing. Someone's pen falls to the floor with a soft click, and 5 people flinch like a gun went off. You suddenly realize this isn't just about pride. It's about narrative. If Zerhan loses, it'll be whispered across the region that Israel blinked first. If Hamad loses, the Gulf states might see it as weakness. The ceasefire document waits in its briefcase like a sulking guest who knows he wasn't really invited, and still, no one even glances at it. 30 minutes go by. You can barely feel your legs. The tent is a sauna. Your tongue tastes like dust and nerves. Then, unexpectedly, Hamad speaks. One time, he says softly, in English, I played a game with a Soviet officer on the steps of the Kuwait towers. He offered me vodka after his queen was taken. Zerhan doesn't look up. What did you offer him? A ride to the airport. There's a tiny chuckle from the translator. Zerhan finally moves. Bishop sweep, a sharp one. Hamad pauses, then slides his queen backward. You recognize it immediately. He's playing defensively, which means he knows he can't win on momentum. Zerhan presses the advantage. For the first time since the match began, the Israeli general is dictating the pace. His pieces move faster, clean, precise. Now you remember why they brought him. The IDF doesn't do soft power very well, but they understand pattern recognition, timing, and psychological pressure. This match, it's Zerhan's home turf. He's not just playing chess, he's performing deterrence. Two more pieces fall, then a third. The emissary sips his coffee, but his eyes narrow ever so slightly. You lean toward the translator. What happens if he loses? The translator shrugs. Then the talks become harder, not impossible, but less elegant. You blink. Elegant? He nods. Chess is elegance, war is noise. The sun outside shifts. Shadows crawl across the chessboard like quiet ghosts. Zerhan sets a rook down with a barely audible click. Hamad exhales. You see it happen. A realization. A calculation. A small grimace of respect. You studied the 1985 Cairo match, he says. Zerhan nods. It's a favorite. You play like the second player. Zerhan shrugs. Sometimes that's the only way to win. Check. Hamad's king is pinned in 3 directions. The board is tight. One wrong move and it's over. He leans forward, lifts a pawn, and sets it down again without playing it. A minor breach of etiquette. Zerhan raises an eyebrow, but it's not nerves. Hamad looks him in the eye. Well, he says gently, you don't lose. Zerhan looks at the board. His voice is almost inaudible. Not when it matters. And then he resets his own hand, lets it hover over the queen, then pulls away and pushes a pawn instead. It's subtle, but it gives Hamad an out. He doesn't take it. Instead, he matches the move, mirrors it exactly. Now Zerhan has a way out, and just like that, the match stalls. Stalemate range. No one wins, no one loses. But the language spoken between the pieces, it's been heard, understood, negotiated. The treaty still sits in its briefcase, but now maybe it has a place to go. The tent settles into a kind of quiet that isn't really silence. It's the hum of tension being slowly exhaled. No claps, no announcements, just 2 men staring at 32 wooden pieces frozen in an unspoken armistice. But you don't get to relax. The emissary has already begun resetting the board. Another? He asks softly. General Zerhan doesn't answer immediately. He flexes his fingers, then cracks his knuckles. 1, 2, 3 soft pops, and shrugs. Best of 3? Best of 2 and a handshake, Hamad replies. You glance at the translator, who gives a half smile. That's as close to a yes as you're going to get in this world. Here's the thing about this second game. It's not about victory anymore. It's about posture, patience, and performance. Think of it like this. If the first match was opening night at the Theater of Peace, the second is rehearsal in front of the diplomats. And this time, there's an audience. 3 more people enter the tent. UN envoys? Probably. One wears a Red Cross badge. Another has a very large camera he's clearly pretending not to use. The Israeli attaché you recognize from a bar in Cyprus nods to you as he passes by. Word's gotten out. People know something's happening here, and they want to witness it, because it's not every day that peace talks start with a pawn structure. The pieces begin to move. You notice right away, Zerhan is more relaxed this time. His moves are looser, his gaze wanders between turns, and he even lets out a genuine chuckle when Hamad fumbles a rook. There's a rhythm now, a kind of choreography, like 2 jazz musicians riffing off one another. Every move has a counter, every risk is respected, and that's when the translator leans over and whispers something that catches you completely off guard. Masad is listening. You turn slowly. Excuse me? He tilts his head slightly toward a bundle of cables tucked into the corner of the tent, almost hidden behind the flap. Microphone in the lamp base. Israeli make. They're recording every word. You feel a chill that has nothing to do with the desert. And the Kuwaiti side? You ask. Oh, he grins. They're smarter. No bugs. Just 3 men outside who've memorized the transcript of every word spoken so far. One of them's probably already rewritten this match as poetry. You blink. I'm sorry, what? It's an old Gulf tactic, the translator says. Dignify the absurd. Make it sacred, even if it's just a game. The match continues. Zerhan has played a Sicilian defense this time. It's sharper, riskier, almost aggressive. Hamad responds in kind, pushing his pawns forward with the confidence of a man who knows every desert mirage hides a well. And here's the twist. You start seeing patterns. Openings echo each other. A move from today mirrors a maneuver from 3 weeks ago when artillery positioned west of Basra shifted unexpectedly. Coincidence? Or is this match a cipher? You wouldn't be the first to think so. Back in 1973, during the Yom Kippur War, Israeli commanders allegedly used chessboards to simulate Egyptian tank formations. Not out of tradition, but necessity. Map boards were unavailable. Grid squares served the purpose. And as the legend goes, One general used a single captured bishop to represent the Suez Canal. Historians still debate whether it really happened, but it makes sense now, doesn't it? A bishop slides across the board now, and your heart ticks up. Hamad's threatening a long diagonal mate if Zerhan overextends. The general sees it, counters, pushes a pawn, waits. He's not bluffing. And yet, Hamad seems utterly unfazed. He places his elbows on the table, folds his hands, and for the first time today, says something pointed. "Do you know," he begins, "why my country doesn't play Go?" Zerhan raises an eyebrow. "Too many stones, too many empty spaces. We prefer boundaries." He nudges his knight. "Chess is honest. The board has limits. So do we." Zerhan watches the piece, then replies, "But every piece can lie." "And every war does," Hamad answers, almost too quickly. The translator winces, not because the statement is incorrect, but because it's a little too correct. A pawn is taken. Then a rook. Then, for no obvious reason, the game slows. It's not about tactics anymore. It's about tempo. It's about message. That's when the whisper reaches you, literally. Someone behind the translator mutters into a short-range mic, barely audible. "The Kuwaiti moved the bishop on signal. Confirm?" You stare. Wait, you glance at the board. No way. Could the match be choreographed? You try to dismiss the thought, but then the timing of each piece's movement begins to feel too smooth, too theatrical. You know how a real fight feels, jagged, improvisational. This is elegant. Again, that word. You lean over to your contact, Israeli, smug, mid-30s, chewing gum like he's back in Tel Aviv. "This staged?" He shrugs. "Diplomacy is theater. Just depends on how much you charge for tickets." Check. The room quiets again. You've lost track of who's actually winning. But maybe that's the point. Neither of them wants to win too hard or lose too fast. Instead, they're building a story. And it's working. Because at some point, while the pawns disappeared and the bishops took each other out, the treaty briefcase was quietly unlatched. The first few pages are now sitting on a low table nearby. A UN staffer has placed a paperweight on the corner. No one's reading it. Not yet. But it's there now, like a character waiting for their cue. Then, a small commotion outside. A sand truck overturns near the compound wall. Just noise, nothing serious. But it breaks the spell. People turn. You look back and see that the board has changed again. Zerhan has taken the queen, but not checkmate. No declaration, no drama, just the queen, gone. Hamad looks up finally and says in Arabic, "Well played." Zerhan responds in Hebrew, "We're not done." But both men lean back. The board remains. You glance again at the treaty. You get the sense that something very real just happened, even if no one quite knows what to call it yet. The chessboard sits in the middle of the tent like a relic, its pieces frozen mid-battle, ignored now by the very men who breathed tension into them. You're not even sure if the game's still ongoing. No one's declared anything. No winner, no loser. Just two coffee cups, one nearly empty, one untouched, and the faint trace of sweat on polished wood. Then someone clears their throat. Not Hamad, not Zerhan. It's the American observer, the one with the thick glasses and the Stanford lapel pin. He leans in, sets down a folder, and says with the caution of a man walking into a minefield, "Perhaps we open the draft?" It's not really a question. It's an offering. Zerhan lifts one eyebrow, doesn't speak. Hamad watches the folder like it might be booby-trapped, but neither man moves to stop it. So the UN staffer slides the ceasefire draft between them, gently, reverently, like it's holy scripture, or maybe the tab at the end of a very awkward dinner. But no one opens it yet. Instead, Hamad taps one finger on the table 4 times in a precise rhythm. You recognize it, not the rhythm, but the type of move. That's a signal. You saw it once before in Jerusalem, when a negotiation hinged on how long a man held his glass before setting it down. And then the real surprise enters the tent. A soldier? No. A historian. She's from the Kuwaiti Ministry of Culture, apparently, and she's holding a weathered leather folder. Not military, not legal, historical. She bows slightly, places it on the table, and says softly, "For context." Context? The folder opens to reveal a single photograph, black and white, grainy, probably taken in the 1950s. 2 men playing chess on a carpet. In a tent. The resemblance is unmistakable. You lean forward, eyes narrowing. The older man in the keffiyeh? Hamad's father, or perhaps uncle. And the younger man in uniform? Zerhan's mentor, General Maiman, who famously disappeared for a year in the 60s under classified duties. Historians still debate whether that was a covert mission to establish back-channel ties with Gulf monarchies or a sabbatical gone embarrassingly wrong. Either way, here they are, playing chess in a tent, possibly this tent. Zerhan sees it too. And for a moment, just a flicker, you see confusion on his face, a brief tilt of the head, as if the past just walked in and sat down at the board. They never finished their match, Hamad says. Zerhan nods slowly. I suppose we should. And just like that, he moves his knight. You'd forgotten the board was still live, but now the pieces shift again. The tempo returns. It's quieter now, more subdued, like two old men finishing a game that's been waiting half a century for a conclusion. This isn't about Kuwait and Israel anymore. This is about legacy. Outside, the wind has picked up. Sand taps against the canvas in rhythmic bursts, like nature itself trying to join the conversation. You can hear it in your ears, the low hum of something historic threading itself into the fabric of now. Hamad replies with a bishop. Zerhan counters with a pawn. They don't speak. They barely breathe. Each move is methodical, deliberate. It's like watching a funeral procession for unfinished business. And in the back of the tent, you notice a Mossad officer shift uncomfortably. He recognizes the photograph too. For years, the agency claimed that General Maimon was unreachable in 1958. They blamed Cairo, weather, poor communication. But if he was here, playing chess with a Gulf dignitary, then the entire record changes. And you realize something else. This game isn't just metaphor. It's evidence. It's diplomacy hiding in plain sight. One piece moves, another responds. A pawn crosses the center of the board, and Hamad speaks again. We like the third clause, the one about mutual cooperation post-reconstruction. It's the first reference to the treaty. Zerhan doesn't answer, but his rook slides forward. Hamad glances at it, nods. Then, the second clause, not so much, too vague. Another bishop moves. You get it now. Each move signals something in the draft. A pawn equals agree. A bishop needs discussion. A rook, non-negotiable. It's absurd, and it's working. The Stanford Observer scribbles in a notebook so furiously the pen tip snaps. The translator is biting his lip, translating only when necessary, and even the camera guy has stopped pretending not to film. You're watching a new form of communication. Chess diplomacy. Chiplomacy, someone mutters behind you. You turn, surprised. It's the Red Cross guy. Sorry, he says. Just trying something. You grin. Needs work. The game reaches its final phase. Hamad's queen has been quietly building pressure. Zerhan's king is exposed, but not helpless. A single pawn blocks total collapse. The entire match is resting on that one insignificant piece. You look at the treaty. It's open now. Pages turning slowly under the wind. Someone's highlighting phrases. Someone else is nodding. Then a move. Zerhan sacrifices his rook. Hamad pauses. You sure? He asks. Zerhan meets his eyes. Wouldn't play it if I weren't. A long silence. Then Hamad lowers his head slightly. Very well. And moves his queen away from check. Not to win, to allow the king room. It's a gesture, an invitation, a message. We don't need to win. We just need to live. Zerhan pushes a pawn, gently. Check. But it's easily deflected. A draw is now inevitable. The pieces rest. The treaty sits nearby, breathing. And you finally realize this was never about victory. It was about finding a way forward that didn't involve tanks. You don't know when it happened, but at some point, the tent shifted from a standoff to a ceremony. The match is technically still going. Pieces remain on the board. The kings are still alive, but neither player has touched their pieces in several minutes. They just sit there, watching one another, breathing in the same dry desert air, blinking slowly like monks in meditation. It's not resignation. It's reverence. And somewhere in that quiet reverence, the treaty is being read. Soft voices murmur clause by clause. The Stanford Observer flips pages, one after the other. The Kuwaiti historian has her pen out, underlining phrases while nodding to a colleague. One of the Israeli advisors, a young guy with hair that looks like it's been through 3 briefings and a car battery, leans in and says, if they fix Clause 7, we might actually have something here. You glance at the chessboard again. That's when you notice it. The knight, Zerhan's knight, is not on the square it used to be. It's been moved subtly, maybe while no one was watching. It's a mistake, or a message. You whisper to the translator, did you see that? He squints. Which one? The knight F5, it was G3. He tilts his head, calculating. It's either an illegal move or a symbolic one. which is all chess diplomacy really is when you think about it. Legal moves and symbolic ones. Sometimes both. But this knight, nudged into a better position without confrontation, is telling a quiet truth. Sometimes a little dishonesty saves a lot of blood. You look to Zerhan. He doesn't react, just keeps his gaze steady. And then Hamad finally speaks again. Your general, he says, gesturing to the photograph from the 1950s, he drank rose tea, refused coffee, said it made him jittery. Zerhan doesn't smile, but there's a twitch of recognition at the corners of his mouth. He also hated sand, Zerhan replies, but he kept volunteering for desert operations, called it punishment for forgetting things. Hamad nods, like that tracks. You wonder how many wars have been started or stalled by men remembering the wrong things. That's when the storm begins. First, it's just a gust, but then the tent canvas flaps like an angry sail. Sand hits in bursts, stinging your cheek even through the half-closed flap. Someone jumps to secure the poles. An unofficial curses under their breath, holding down papers that try to escape into history. The treaty almost flies off the table. A Red Cross official catches it just in time. The page with Clause 3 now has a perfect thumbprint of date syrup on the corner, courtesy of someone's midday snack. But the board? Unmoved. Every piece, every square, perfectly undisturbed. It's like the wind refuses to interfere with diplomacy, which is ironic, because outside the tent, diplomacy is unraveling. Reports filter in. Egypt's issued a sharp statement. Syria is mobilizing for defense, which always means anything but defense. Iran's foreign minister has left a conference in Vienna early. Someone whispers the word coalition, and not in the good way. When Baghdad sneezes, Riyadh coughs. That's the phrase floating around. And suddenly this little chess game feels like a splinter wedged in the whole regional machine. Small, insignificant. But if it shifts wrong, the entire body might start bleeding. Inside you feel it in the air, the weight of the moment. The way every eye turns to Zerhan and Hamad, not as generals or diplomats anymore, but as avatars of something larger. Not just players, pieces. And in this geopolitical chessboard, neither wants to be the sacrificed knight. Then Hamad reaches forward and gently knocks over his king. A collective inhale. Even the sandstorm seems to pause. Zerhan stares at the fallen king, doesn't speak. Then he pushes back his chair, stands, everyone else follows, and without a word, without a signature, without a formal declaration, the message is loud and clear. Game over. The general walks to the treaty and picks it up, leafing through it casually like he's flipping a newspaper. Hamad joins him. The two men exchange words too soft to hear. You catch one phrase from the general, Clause 7 stays. Hamad nods. Then, and this might be the most shocking moment of all, they shake hands. Not a stiff handshake, not a symbolic one, just a real human handshake, like they've both seen the same ridiculous desert and decided it's not worth ruining over semantics. You exhale. You didn't realize you were holding your breath. The Mossad guy behind you murmurs, he didn't lose. You turn. Who? Zerhan, he says. That wasn't checkmate. It was agreement. You nod slowly. Same thing today, right? He chuckles. Only if the journalists agree. Outside, the sand still howls. The wind still beats against the canvas. But inside the tent, a new quiet takes hold. People begin to pack up. Someone rolls the chessboard back into its velvet case. The coffee tray is empty now, except for one cup still full. Zerhan's, the one he never touched. You step out into the wind, and it hits you. Some wars end not with peace, but with pauses. Ceasefires that last long enough for children to grow, for grudges to soften, for names to fade into textbooks. And maybe, just maybe, a pawn can do what a tank never could. You wake the next morning still tasting sand. It's in your teeth, in your nose, maybe even behind your eyeballs. The storm passed in the night, leaving the camp painted in fine beige dust. Soldiers are sweeping out their tents with bundles of palm fronds. Reporters are dabbing lens wipes over crusted camera lenses. A camel tied near the mess tent looks personally offended. And you? You're brushing your boots with your toothbrush because nothing else works. Welcome to diplomacy in the desert. The chessboard is gone. Packed up? Vanished. Someone says it was airlifted at dawn. Another claims a museum in Geneva has already made an offer. Someone else swears Hamad took it himself and buried it in the sand, like a time capsule for future diplomats who think peace is a group project. But whether it's myth or metadata doesn't matter. The match happened. And the treaty, it's now got 12 provisional signatures, including one in particularly loopy Hebrew that everyone suspects is Zerhan's. There's red ink correcting clauses 4 and 9. Clause 7, unchanged per the general's soft-spoken decree. Still, no press release, no podium, just silence. Because that's what a good ceasefire sounds like. Nothing. You walk to the operations tent for the debriefing. A couple of new faces greet you, young analysts, wide-eyed, with fresh ties and even fresher opinions. One of them leans over to you as you sit. So who actually won the match? You consider that. Let the question breathe. Then you say, depends who wrote the script. The guy nods like you've just quoted Sun Tzu. You didn't. You're just tired. The debrief begins. An American officer plays a video from the chess match, close-up footage of hands moving pieces. No faces, just fingers. The angle feels surgical, impersonal, like the camera's trying to remove any trace of humanity from the game. The analyst narrates like it's game film from a military op. Here, the knight is offered could signal openness on cross-border trade. Watch the queen's diagonal move, corresponds with Kuwait's water-sharing clause. Then he pauses, rewinds, freezes frame. There, he says. That knight move, the same one you noticed yesterday. Illegal, he says. It broke a rule. Someone else chimes in. Could have been accidental. A third voice, or symbolic. Silence. And then the oldest man in the room, a Jordanian legal advisor who hasn't spoken in 2 days, leans forward and says, sometimes the only legal move is breaking a rule. You scribble that one down. Might steal it for a memoir someday. The conversation veers toward enforceability now. Who monitors what? Who calls who when the inevitable misunderstanding happens? You tune it out, because you're stuck on that moment, the one where the game turned from contest to conversation. It's strange, isn't it? 2 men, 32 pieces. No trophy, no press, and yet the entire region seemed to exhale afterward. But history's not made with trumpets. It's made with nudges. And then your phone buzzes. A coded message. Just a few words scrambled through your diplomatic cipher. Jordan ready to host next round. Bring board. You smile. History's already asking for a sequel. That afternoon, the camp begins to break down. The chess tent is folded. The UN logo peeled off its flap like a postage stamp. Soldiers collect crates of bottled water and satellite phones. But something feels different in the air now. Not peace exactly. Not trust, but stillness. You pass General Zerhan at the mess line. He's pouring tea into a dented tin cup. For the first time, he acknowledges you. Barely. A small nod. Then he mutters, just loud enough. Never liked knights. Always too unpredictable. You grin. That one saved your king, he shrugs. Didn't say it wasn't useful. And that's as much small talk as you'll get. Later, as the sun begins to dip behind a haze of copper-colored sky, Hamad walks to his car, flanked by 2 assistants. No ceremony, no reporters. He steps into the back seat, then pauses. Next time, he says, without looking back, you play. You chuckle. Any tips? Yes, he says, sliding the door shut. Start with the center. Always. The car pulls away, leaving behind only tire marks in the sand. 2 long parallel lines that vanish over the ridge. You stand there a while, letting the breeze tug at your shirt, wondering how many wars could have been avoided if someone had just brought a chessboard and a translator to the right room at the right time. Historians still debate whether this match actually influenced the treaty. Some say it was symbolic theater, a distraction from real negotiations. Others believe it was the negotiation, the pieces themselves a vocabulary that transcended paper and pens. Either way, no shots were fired after that day. And in this region, that's something. You're back in Tel Aviv 2 weeks later, sipping espresso at a sidewalk cafe and watching life resume its usual contradictions. Beach traffic 1 street over, cabinet arguments echoing out of car radios, and somewhere nearby, 2 kids arguing over who gets to be white in a chess game unfolding on a cardboard box. The ceasefire has held. Not perfectly. There was a border misunderstanding 2 nights ago, and someone shot down a surveillance drone that may or may not have been flying where it shouldn't. But no one's counting casualties in dozens. No one's calling for total response. Instead, they're calling for meetings. Lots of meetings. Jordan is hosting the next round, as promised. The invitation was drafted in 3 languages and signed with more ceremonial wax than a Renaissance treaty. You're told the chessboard is already en route? Flying business class under diplomatic cargo classification. Cultural artifact fragile. You smile at that. Across the table from you, a friend from the foreign ministry leans in. So, she says, you gonna write this one up? You shrug. Not really my style. Too boring? Too unbelievable. She raises an eyebrow. You mean to tell me a ceasefire that started with a rook and ended with a handshake is too far-fetched? You think about that. And then you remember how, during the second match, Hamad never once glanced at the Israeli cameras, even when they were obviously rolling, and how General Zerhan only ever drank from his own canteen. Neither trusted the space around them, but they trusted the rules of a 64-square board. You know what's wild, you say? They never once referred to the board by name. Not chess, not match, just moves. She leans back. Maybe that's all war is, just moves. Until someone tips the king, she nods, staring out at the sea. Behind you, someone drops a plate. It shatters. Nobody flinches. You realize how long it's been since you were last this relaxed. But even here, the story keeps unfolding. Later that day, you're summoned to a small private museum room inside a compound north of Herzliya. The curator wears gloves and has the stiff gait of someone who walks like his spine still remembers military formation drills. He opens a crate in front of you. Inside, nestled in foam and velvet, is the board. The board. Same scratches, same faint stains of cardamom on one corner. But now, it's different, because it's history now. We're digitizing every move, the curator explains, archiving the sequence, annotating the metadata. You raise an eyebrow. For what? Future simulations, he replies, like it's obvious. Imagine teaching negotiators through chess scenarios, move by move, clause by clause, real-time negotiation encoded into game logic. You exhale, a ceasefire simulator. He nods. Why not? Then he pulls out the surprise. From beneath the board, wrapped in cloth, he reveals a slip of paper, handwritten, curling at the edges. You recognize Hamad's script immediately, elegant, slanted. It reads, when language fails, let silence speak. When silence fails, let pieces move. When pieces fall, remember this. Not every loss is defeat. You stare at it. Poetic, you murmur. The curator smirks. Annoying, too. No one knows when he wrote it. Some think it was before the first match. Some? There's a theory, he whispers, lowering his voice, that the entire match was choreographed in advance, a theatrical treaty dance, like a Sufi poem played out in pawns and bishops. You laugh. So a conspiracy and a performance? He shrugs. Or just two men trying not to blow up the region? He offers you a pair of gloves. You hesitate, then take them. You lift a piece, Zerhan's Black King. It's heavier than you remember, worn smooth along the base. As you turn it over in your hand, something rattles inside. The curator catches your eye. You feel that? You nod. Never figured it out. Doesn't unscrew, doesn't open. Might just be loose wood. Or something else. Something tucked inside, rattling gently, waiting for someone, maybe years from now, to break it open and discover one more secret about how peace almost happened. You place it back carefully and walk out. That night, you dream of a board with no sides, where pawns talk, where knights wait, where kings never fall unless they choose to. And you think, maybe that's how peace gets made. One move at a time. You arrive in Amman with jet lag in your bones and a chessboard in your carry-on. Not the board, but a board. One commissioned by Jordan's Royal Protocol team, hand-carved from olive wood, inlaid with mother of pearl, and delivered with a note for continuity of tone and tempo. Only in this part of the world would diplomacy have a tempo. The new venue is an old Ottoman house repurposed for discreet engagements. It smells of citrus polish and tobacco ghosts. You're shown to a side room with just two chairs, one low table, and floor cushions embroidered with antique thread. Zerhan is already there, back slightly hunched, spectacles resting just below the bridge of his nose. He looks older this time, like someone paused him and forgot to hit play again. You nod in greeting. He returns it, but barely. No Hamad yet. Instead, there's a deputy, a Kuwaiti aide named Talal, younger, sharper, and clearly rehearsed. You catch him scanning the room like it's his final exam. The pieces are unpacked, the board is centered, the cushions are adjusted 3 times by protocol staff, as if alignment equals peace. And then, just as the coffee arrives, Hamad steps in. Same soft sandals, same disarming calm. But this time, he carries a book under his arm. Not a folder, a book. He sets it on the edge of the table. You glance down. It's a collection of Arabic poems from the 12th century, because of course it is. He opens to a bookmarked page and reads aloud. The falcon does not ask the sparrow why it flees. The river does not ask the fire why it smolders. Only the mountain waits for both. You try not to roll your eyes, but Zerhan surprisingly responds. Mountains erode, he mutters. Only slowly, Hamad replies. The game begins again. No announcements. No coin toss. Talal places white in front of Hamad, and the pieces move. This match is different. Less tension, more rhythm. It's like jazz after curfew. You can tell they've played this variation before. Maybe not these exact moves, but this style. Hamad opens with the English opening, a move that feels cautious, even deferential. Zerhan responds with the Nimzo Indian defense, an old Cold War favorite. The message is clear. Let's not make mistakes early. As the match develops, so does the conversation. Not directly. No one's debating borders aloud. But each piece moved, each pause taken, seems tied to a deeper discussion. Like when Hamad advances a pawn, and Talal says, Clause 9 can be reworded, but the water shares stay. Or when Zerhan sacrifices a bishop and mutters, that's the cost of an open road to Basra. It's not just a chess game. It's a model, a blueprint, a metaphor that carries weight. Even the mistakes are meaningful. When Hamad forgets to castle and puts his king at mild risk, no one mentions it, but Talal says, we're willing to risk an early reopening of the economic zones. A misstep with intent. And when Zerhan blunders a knight rare for him, you hear the Israeli observer scribble something and whisper, that's Clause 3 being dropped. You get chills. The room has become a board, and the game, a conversation. There's no shouting, no bargaining, just the elegant, unhurried code of strategy. And beneath it all, a rhythm, like prayer, like music. 3 hours in, you realize something wild. This might be the most productive regional meeting in 5 years. Not because of what's said, but because of what's shown. A move, a silence, a response. The unspoken pact between competitors. I will not humiliate you if you do not try to break me. At one point, the curator from Herzliya joins by video call. He confirms that the original board is now on display, surrounded by security glass, facing east. A child visited last week and whispered to it. The staff let him. Because why not? Even myth needs maintenance. As the Amman match reaches its midpoint, Hamad leans back and folds his hands. Clause 7, he says. Zeran's hand freezes over his rook. You feel the room shift. 7 is the clause about prisoner exchange. The messy one. The one both sides circled but never fully agreed to. Zerhan slowly retracts his hand. It's not the clause, he says. It's the timing. And Hamad nods. Like he knew that. Like he wanted to hear it aloud. The game pauses. Pieces remain mid-motion, and the conversation finally becomes verbal. Hamad, we release first, 1 to 5. You'll pick the 5, 3, and 2. Reciprocal terms, with the red crescent watching. Silence. Then Zerhan moves his bishop. It's a trap, but a respectful one. Hamad plays into it, allows the capture, and then with a voice soft as parchment, Clause 7 amended. You scribble it down. No gavel, no handshake, just the click of a bishop and the folding of a poem. But in this room, that's the sound of policy being born. You're not supposed to be in the palace courtyard. Technically, only observers with clearance from 2 sides and 1 neutral party can enter the inner garden after sunset. But a Jordanian officer, sleepy, amused, and clearly operating under the ancient principle of who's really going to care tonight, lets you through. So now you're walking under lemon trees, the night air thick with citrus and diplomatic fatigue. Somewhere inside, Clause 7 is being printed in triplicate. Somewhere else, someone's arguing about font size. But here, there's peace, real peace, or at least the part that smells good and doesn't shoot back. That's when you find them. Not sitting at the table, not even near the board, just standing. General Zerhan, one hand behind his back, the other holding a peeled orange. He's eating it like a soldier on rations, methodically, slice by slice, eyes watching the stone path like it owes him a favor. Hamad stands across from him, jacket off, sleeves rolled, holding a single pawn. Just a pawn. Rolling it between his fingers like a worry stone. Neither man speaks. You don't interrupt. Eventually, Hamad breaks the silence. You ever think about how many wars were lost over pawns? Zerhan finishes chewing, swallows. I think about how many were started over kings. A beat. Then Hamad flips the pawn into the air, catches it. Again. Zerhan doesn't flinch. I wanted to quit the army in '84, Hamad says, as if you aren't there. But my father said, you cannot walk away from the sword while others still draw it. Zerhan nods. Mine said, if you must serve, be the one who keeps the others from bleeding too fast. Hamad laughs, softly, but with edge. So neither of us wanted this. No, Zerhan says, brushing juice from his palm, but we're still here. And they are. Older now, exhausted, but not enemies. And you wonder, not for the first time, whether peace is really forged at tables, or if it just appears there, like vapor, after long enough without killing. Back inside, the game has resumed. Not the one on the board, the one on the walls. The press is here, and they've brought questions, dozens of them. Is this a permanent ceasefire? What are the terms of prisoner exchange? Does this signal normalization? And your favorite, why chess? No one has an answer. Not really. But someone, probably Talal, releases a statement that dances around meaning without ever touching it. In an era of noise, we chose silence. In a time of weapons, we chose wisdom. The board is only a reflection of the men who sit before it. Catchy, but ambiguous enough to avoid headlines. You're sitting near the translator now, your old ally from the desert tent. He's drinking flat soda from a plastic cup and watching the reporters like they're ants building a colony they'll abandon in 3 days. He leans over. You know what the real move was? You raise an eyebrow. Clause 10. You blink. There was no Clause 10. Exactly. Turns out they added it at the last second. A quiet clause. Buried. Not binding, not loud, not even public yet. But it reads, in the event of future dispute, the parties agree to first reconvene over the board before resorting to arms. You sit back. You didn't expect that. A clause mandating a chess match before open conflict? It's absurd. It's brilliant. It's real. The translator grins. Makes war a little slower, doesn't it? Or smarter. Or both. Because if you can't stop the world from spinning, maybe you can at least make it move at the tempo of a pawn. Later, after the room clears and the chess set is packed once more, this time inside a velvet bag marked diplomatic property, do not open without coffee, you find yourself alone with the board. You sit, just for a second. Set the pieces, move white pawn to e4. Classic, safe, inviting. And then, because why not, you move black pawn to c5. Sicilian defense. The match begins again, even if only in your head, because now you understand, the board isn't a symbol, it's a system. One where risk is visible, where rules are enforced, where mercy can be offered and retreat is never cowardice, it's just another move. And maybe, just maybe, that's all diplomacy really is. Not an agreement, not a ceremony, just the next best move you can make. Middle seat, economy class. The guy on your left is asleep with his mouth open, and the woman on your right is knitting something furious and red that looks like it might strangle her if she loses focus. And you? You've got a file folder on your lap marked Unofficial Transcript Amman Board Sessions. It's not classified. Not really. But it's definitely not bedtime reading. You flip through it anyway. Each page contains move annotations, like a Grandmaster's tournament record, except with margins full of scribbled notes. Move 12, bishop to d3. Corresponds with amended transit proposal. Move 19, knight retreat, read as concession. Move 27, pawn advance, symbolic, signals resilience, re clause 7. It's part battle map, part poem, part policy manifesto, and it's beautiful. Because between these black and white squares, these rote letters and numbers, is an entire month of human tension and fragile hope, recorded not in blood, but in strategy. You wonder how many diplomats ever read their own history in algebraic notation. The stewardess rolls past with a drink cart. You ask for tea. She gives you ginger ale. Close enough. You sip and stare out the window. Below, the desert rolls by, miles and miles of cracked earth and dry bones. Somewhere down there is the tent from the first match, already half buried again in sand. The wind is always quicker than memory in these parts, but something still lingers in the air. And not just legacy. Reputation, because word has gotten out. Not from the press. No, the official story is still productive regional dialogue. But the real story? The game? The pieces? The kings who never fell? That's traveling by whisper. In Morocco, you hear a delegation has requested their own board. In Ankara, a former general turned professor is designing a course on strategic symbolism in nonverbal negotiation. And in Abu Dhabi, a business summit ends early when two CEOs agree to settle a shipping dispute over, you guessed it, a chess match. Historians still debate whether this is diplomacy's future or a weird, hyper-specific fad. One columnist called it Middle East Sudoku, theatrical but ultimately meaningless. But the chessboard doesn't care. It just waits for the next player. When you land, a driver picks you up with a small sign that says Pawn Whisperer. You don't ask who arranged it. You just get in and ride. Back in your flat, you toss your bag onto the couch, kick off your shoes, and immediately walk to the shelf where you keep your travel chessboard. Not the official one, just yours. Leather-bound, magnetic, with tiny pieces that barely stay upright when the fan's on. But it's yours. You open it, set the pieces, and without knowing why, you recreate the final moves of Amen piece by piece. You move the white bishop to f1 like Hamad did, then black pawn to g4. White rook swings to the open file. You pause. Remember the moment, the breath before clause 10. The moment the world leaned forward, not knowing whether it would fall or fly. And then, just like they did, you push the final pawn. Advance it boldly, one square. No flair, no capture, just presence, and the match ends. Not in checkmate, not in resignation, but in understanding. Outside, the city hums, horns blare, kids shout. Inside, the board is still. And that's when you notice something. There's a note tucked into your file folder, not printed, handwritten. Elegant Arabic script translated carefully beneath. You have seen what words could not hold. Remember this, every king is just a piece until the board is reset. No signature, but you know the handwriting, and you smile. Because maybe the board never ends. It just pauses, waits for the next ridiculous, brilliant, half-possible idea to land in the middle of a conflict like a dove with a briefcase. Maybe that's your next job. To find that dove. The invitation is sealed in wax, literally. Red wax, pressed with a sigil you don't recognize, a falcon overlaid with a chess rook. It arrives in a cream-colored envelope slipped under your apartment door with no return address, just a handwritten line. Pack light, bring the board. You're not sure whether to feel honored or mildly threatened. Inside is a single sheet of parchment textured stationery. Provisional talks, location undisclosed. Parties classified. Context, escalation prevention. Required attire casual. Confidence optional. Arrival window 48 hours. There's no contact information, no number to confirm. But the next morning, a car is waiting. You sigh, grab your chessboard, and once again, choose boots over sneakers. The drive is long and unremarkable. Desert, checkpoints, the occasional hawk gliding above as if curious which small conflict you're about to throw yourself into this time. Eventually, you arrive. A stone compound clinging to the edge of a cliff. Below, a river slices through red rock like a vein through exhausted skin. Above, a sky too bright to trust. And inside, 3 men. One is Iranian, dressed in a loose linen shirt, beard thick with the sort of grooming that signals, I do not answer directly to anyone, but I'm always aware who's watching. One is Saudi, buttoned collar, elegant shoes, and a ring on his right hand bearing the family crest of a regional council you suspect is older than most borders. The third, a diplomat from Egypt. Sleeves rolled, eyes sharp, carrying a folder that's too thin for real policy and too thick for poetry. You suspect it contains both. They're seated around a table. The board waits. You set up the pieces. And here's the thing. No one speaks. They just nod at you, like you are the protocol now. You take a step back, and the match begins. The Iranian opens with d4. Bold, controlling. The Saudi counters with knight to f6, measured, defensive, watching more than pushing. Egypt waits. Then, slowly moves a bishop in from the side, almost theatrical, and you realize this is a 3-player game. It shouldn't work. There are no official rules for 3-sided chess on a standard board. The geometry breaks down. Alliances crumble with a single poor diagonal. But somehow it flows. Not smoothly, not perfectly. But like diplomacy often does, just well enough to avoid flames. Each man moves not just for himself, but to block the worst possible outcomes. You watch a knight protect another player's queen. You watch a bishop hesitate at capture, choosing not to escalate. You watch pawns, normally disposable, stand their ground for multiple rounds as messengers of intention. You're not taking notes, you're taking witness. And around the 10th move, the Saudi player leans forward and speaks softly, "We are not here to win." And the Iranian responds, "Then let us not lose." The Egyptian simply says, "Agreed." From outside the window, the wind stirs the edge of the curtains. In the distance, you can hear the faint crackle of a generator and the hum of waiting helicopters. Because nothing is ever just metaphor. Not here. The match continues for over an hour, and by the end, there are no kings toppled, just three tired men, one rubbing his temples, another with ink on his cuff, the third closing his folder as though it had been fulfilled, even if never opened. Someone brings tea. No sugar, no milk, just bitter, burning liquid. They all drink it anyway. Then the Saudi extends a hand across the board, not to a specific person, just outward, forward. The Iranian hesitates, then shakes it. The Egyptian adds a thumb to the grip, a triangle of palms, like a pyramid built on stubbornness, oil, and deeply suspicious optimism. And that's it. No document signed, no statement released. But somewhere far away, a radar operator in the Golan Heights watches a screen go quiet. A logistics officer in Basra receives orders to pause a convoy. A journalist in Dubai gets a memo labeled Recalibrate Language, De-escalation Framework Active. And you? You pack up the board, wipe a smudge from the Black Queen, and before you leave, the Egyptian hands you a scrap of paper. Folded once. It reads, "If the game must be played, let it be with fewer casualties and more draws." No name. No title. But something tells you Clause 11 is already being drafted, and that when it's written, it won't start with whereas. It'll start with white to move. The board goes quiet for a while. No calls, no car rides, no midnight couriers with wax-sealed envelopes and poetic threats. Weeks pass, and it's like the whole idea, chess as diplomacy, has receded into the background again, like a desert town after the last caravans passed. You return to your apartment, to the echoing stillness of a space that isn't used to silence anymore. The chessboard sits untouched on the coffee table. A single pawn is missing, but you let it be. Feels honest. Then, one night, a knock. You open the door to find a courier, drenched from unexpected rain. No package this time, just a USB drive in a waterproof pouch. He hands it over and says, "I was told you'd know what to do." You nod. "I never do." He laughs and disappears into the stairwell. Inside, you plug it in. One file, no encryption, just video footage, grainy, overhead angle, no sound. It's a chess match, and you immediately recognize the players. Zerhan. Hamad. Again. But this time, they're not alone. Sitting beside Hamad is a woman, mid-40s, eyes bright with contained fire. She's Kuwaiti, maybe one of the royal family's rising diplomats. And next to Zerhan, a younger officer you've seen in the background of photos, likely a former tank commander turned envoy. They're playing in tandem. 2-on-2. Diplomacy has gone co-op. The moves are fast, coordinated. Each pair whispers quietly between turns. Nothing dramatic, just murmured suggestions, fingertip gestures, slight nods. What's strange is how much smoother this match looks. Less confrontational, more fluid. Like the rhythm of conflict has softened into the rhythm of conversation. You jot notes. Move 5, unusual double bishop fianchetto, a statement. Move 12, knight sacrifice, but from the junior envoy, intentional. Move 19, stalemate trap avoided, elegant pivot by Kuwaiti diplomat. Then, at move 21, something unexpected happens. They all stop, not like someone's won, not like someone's lost, just stop. Then, in unison, they reset the board. No drama, no size, just start over and play again. You watch for over an hour. They play 3 full matches, none to checkmate, all ending in draws. But what you see, what no transcript will ever capture, is this. They're learning, not just about the board, about each other. You recognize the small things. The Kuwaiti diplomat giving way on a contested move. The Israeli junior pausing before capturing as if seeking permission. Hamad allowing a pawn to be taken to make a larger point. It's not performance, it's rehearsal. You rewind the tape. At the bottom of the screen, a handwritten date is taped to the table. For Annex 2. Annex 2. You dig through your files. There it is. A secondary clause added to the broader agreement during the Amman meetings. Almost overlooked, written in pencil. In the event of future negotiations requiring multi-generational presence, sessions may adopt alternative formats to encourage mutual understanding, including but not limited to symbolic simulations. That's what this is, a symbolic simulation. And it's brilliant, because by putting juniors beside veterans, they're teaching the next wave without lectures, without bullet points. They're encoding nuance through moves. You replay one sequence 3 times. It's the younger Israeli placing his queen in jeopardy. Hamad doesn't punish it. Instead, he moves his rook to defend it. It's not a move, it's a message. I see your mistake. I won't make it cost us both. You pause the video, stare at the screen, then look over at your board, and for the first time in weeks, you reach for the pieces, set them up again, and say out loud to no one, "Let's try that again." Because the lesson isn't just about the moves, it's about the reset, the willingness to start over, to replay, not because you lost, but because you want to get it right this time. You're woken up at 4:12 a.m. by a vibrating phone and the kind of ringtone that only goes off when something has either gone terribly wrong or unreasonably right. You sit up, knock over your half-empty teacup, and answer without looking at the name. "Yeah, it's happening," a voice says. "Could be more specific." The voice sighs, amused. "It's Talal. There's going to be an international match. Official. Televised." You blink the sleep out of your brain. A what? A match. On camera. With commentary. High-level envoys, one from each delegation. 4 players total, on neutral ground. Vienna? You'll get details when you land. I didn't say I was going. You never do. But you're always on the plane. Click. You're packed in 20 minutes. The suitcase practically zips itself. You land in Vienna to cold air and tense smiles. The location, an old ballroom converted into a broadcast studio. Gold paneling, chandeliers, that weird carpet all European conference centers seem to share. Patterned, hypnotic, designed by someone who once saw a kaleidoscope and never emotionally recovered. There are cameras in every corner. Journalists with notepads, translators in glass booths, and 3 different kinds of lighting technicians adjusting for the exact shadow cast by a bishop. It feels more like a World Cup than a diplomatic maneuver. And the board? It's the original one. The board, unboxed, displayed, and given a fresh polish. Its squares gleam under the lights like it's ready for revenge. You're ushered to the commentary box, a ridiculous title, given that you're mostly just there to observe, but someone hands you a microphone anyway. You ask if you can turn it off. They say no, so you put it on and pretend it's just a brooch. The players file in one by one. From Kuwait, Hamad's apprentice, the woman from the co-op game. Calm, eyes like weathered cedarwood, wearing a pin that reads Clause 7. From Israel, the young officer, now in a tailored suit, but you can still see the tension of battlefield memory in his posture. From Egypt, the same diplomatic veteran, smiling like someone who bet money on all outcomes and wins no matter who topples the king. A fresh face, new to the table, chosen for neutrality but sharp, a former chess prodigy turned water resource negotiator. Because, of course, the game begins, and you immediately notice, this is no simulation. Every move has a cost. The cameras catch the subtleties, the glances between allies, the calculated risks, the way one player almost moves a piece, then retracts, and whispers something instead. The Kuwaiti envoy opens boldly. The Israeli counters with something aggressive, too aggressive. The Egyptian slows it down, offering stability. The Jordanian refuses to escalate, playing time control. It's not a game, it's a dance. And for the first time, the world watches. At one point, the Israeli envoy places his queen on prise, a sacrifice. Deliberate. You feel the ripple in the room. He's offering leverage. The Kuwaiti envoy blinks once, just once, then she moves her bishop away, declines the offer. The camera cuts to her face. Calm, deliberate, and beneath the table, you can just see her hand flex, not trembling, choosing restraint. The room is quiet. Even the journalists stop typing, and you whisper into the mic, barely audible. That's not a missed opportunity. That's an agreement without words. The match continues for nearly 3 hours, multiple openings explored, multiple middle games unfolded. Each time a tension arises, someone relieves it, not by retreat, but by balance. You begin to wonder, are they playing the board or playing us? Is this whole thing an elaborate performance meant to teach the watching world how restraint looks? Historians will argue over this for decades. Was the match real? Or was it a diplomatic passacaglia, a looping piece of music, structured yet evolving, where harmony emerges not from victory, but repetition with variation? Near the end, the Egyptian places a rook between 2 exposed kings. The Jordanian covers it with a pawn. Checkmate is possible, 2 or 3 moves away, but no one takes it. Instead, the players begin repeating moves, draw by 3-fold repetition. A technical tie, intentional. The arbiter nods. The commentators scramble to make meaning. You just sit there, mic in your lap, smiling, because you know what just happened. They didn't draw out of indecision. They drew out of mutual certainty. The press calls it the Vienna Accord, even though no paper was signed. A week later, NATO includes the footage in a course titled Symbolic Negotiation Methods. The UN releases a statement that simply reads, "Peace is sometimes a draw." And you? You board your flight home, chessboard in your lap. Not the real one, just yours. And this time, you don't reset the pieces. You leave them mid-game. Because not all peace comes at the end. Sometimes it lives in the pause. Get the call at dusk. You're sitting on a rooftop somewhere in Haifa, feet on the railing, drinks sweating beside you, watching the sea dull into that syrupy blue that only happens when the day's heat finally gives up. The phone buzzes once, unknown number. You answer anyway. "Hamad's gone," a voice says. No greeting, no build-up, just the words, crisp and dry. Your mind doesn't catch up at first. Gone? As in dead. You stand without realizing. The sea doesn't move. He how? Heart, the voice says. In his sleep, he was visiting family outside Beirut. You sit back down. Slowly, he's gone. The man who brought goats to a ceasefire meeting, who quoted 12th century poets during board openings, who once stared down a drone with nothing but a pawn in hand. The voice continues. They're holding a private remembrance. You're on the list. You nod. Where? There's a pause. Then you'll know. And like that, the call ends. The next day, a single envelope is slid under your door. Inside, an airline ticket, one matchbook from a coffee house in Tyre, and a folded square of paper. No writing, just a drawing. A black king, tipped sideways. That's it, you go. You don't pack much, just the travel board, and the letter Hamad once left in your folder, the one about kings and resets. You arrive at a villa by the sea. The waves are louder here, crashing like grief. A dozen people stand in silence around a small table set with bread, dates, and the original chessboard. It's not a funeral. There's no imam, no chanting, just memory, and the board. Everyone is invited to make a move. You watch as one by one they approach, move a piece, and step away. No timer, no opponents, just people making gestures in a language only they understand. When it's your turn, you don't hesitate. You move the black queen forward, bold, centered, alone. You don't explain why. You don't need to, because Hamad would have smiled. The next day, something strange happens. The board disappears. Not stolen, not lost, just gone. No one claims it, no one asks. And over the coming weeks, reports trickle in from all over. A journalist in Algeria swears she saw the board in a Berber cafe, behind glass, with no label. An ex-diplomat in Geneva says it's in a Swiss mountain lodge, used only during snowstorms. Someone uploads a photo of it in Kyoto, displayed next to a Go set, with a sign that reads, "Pieces are nothing without patience." But no one can track it. It's as if the board has become free. No longer a tool of state. Just an idea now, drifting. Appearing where needed. Whispering that maybe, just maybe, you don't need missiles to de-escalate. You just need rules, and a willingness to play by them. One night, months later, you get a letter in the mail. Real letter. Paper. Stamped from Cyprus. It has only one line. The board is always there, if you choose to sit. No name. But the handwriting, you'd swear it was his. And just like that, you know your next move. Not on the board, but in life. You book a flight the next morning, not for work, not for policy, just to find a quiet place where someone else might be waiting, with pieces already set. Because peace isn't always drafted in ink. Sometimes it's built from wood, hope, and habit. Sometimes it's not what you win, but what you don't destroy. Though you're not supposed to. You're in a back alley courtyard in Sarajevo, of all places. A friend of a friend tells you to stop by a cafe that only opens after sundown and has no name, just a faded sign of a rook over a crescent moon. You expect strong coffee. You get something else. In the back, under soft lamplight and a wisteria vine curling over the stone wall, over the stone wall. There it is. Same scratches. Same patina. A little more wear, like it's been traveling without a passport. And sitting across from it, two kids, 12, maybe 13. One Palestinian, one Israeli, by the looks, by the posture, by the guarded curiosity in their glances. They're not speaking, but they're playing. One has a bishop trapped, the other hesitates to take it. You watch the moment stretch like a held breath, and then the kid lets it go. Takes the piece, gently. No gloating, no grin. Just the quiet understanding that this is a game, and games have rules. The old owner of the cafe wanders over, notices you staring, and says, "Found it in a shipment of books from Morocco. No idea how it got there." You smile. It travels. He nods. It teaches, and that's what sticks with you. Because by now, the story of the chessboard ceasefire has spread far beyond the Middle East. You've seen art exhibits in Paris titled Moves of Mercy. You've heard diplomats in Jakarta refer to pawn clauses in trade talks. You even caught a classroom in Montreal streaming Vienna footage for a civics lesson titled Choosing the Draw. Historians still debate whether the original players ever truly intended it to go global. Some claim Hamad once whispered to a student, it was all improvisation. Others insist Zerhan had a long game mapped 5 moves ahead, never let them know it was your knight that blinked. But the truth? The truth doesn't really matter now, because the board is everywhere, not just the wood and ivory, the idea that you don't always have to win to prevent war, that a draw can be a gift, that silence, patience, and a well-timed sacrifice might save more lives than sanctions ever could. And you keep showing up, sometimes to play, sometimes just to set the board, because now people are asking for it. Municipal mediators in Spain, peace officers in South Africa, environmental negotiators from 3 feuding river commissions in Central Asia. They don't ask for bullets, they ask for bishops. And you keep moving. You carry your own board now. Not the original. Yours, scuffed, reliable, the kind you can open on a park bench in Berlin or in a tent outside Jenin and say, let's try something different this time. You always begin the same way. You offer white, you move pawn to e4, and then you wait. You wait for someone, maybe a rival, maybe a stranger, maybe an old enemy who still smells like border dust, to sit down, consider the pieces, and move one of theirs. Not toward you, but toward possibility. Because peace doesn't announce itself. It just takes a chair, nods, and plays by the rules. And sometimes, when you're lucky, it lets you go first. Cool down. So now you're lying there, eyes half closed, mind full of little squares, old rivals, and rooks that learned restraint. It's quiet now. You can almost hear the breeze curling under the door, the ceiling fan clicking like a second hand marking something slower than time. The board's been packed away. The pieces are resting. But somewhere, not too far, another one is being set up. Maybe by someone who is watching. Maybe by someone who just needs to feel like rules still exist. Like there's still a way to say, I disagree, without saying, I destroy. And maybe, just maybe, that person will remember what you saw. A general who didn't raise his voice. A diplomat who answered war with silence. A moment where no one claimed victory, but no one buried the other. Maybe that's the point of all this. To remind us that peace doesn't always walk in with trumpets and treaties. Sometimes it tiptoes in wearing slippers and holding a pawn. Sometimes it just waits for us to sit down, breathe deep, and say, your move. So go ahead, turn off the lights, let the noise settle, let your dreams wander over deserts and boardrooms, tent flaps and treaty halls. Let the kings lie down for once. Let the knights stop charging. And if you wake up tomorrow and find the world still playing, maybe bring your board, just in case someone across from you finally says, let's try this without the shouting.